Fam, what's going on? It's Kyle Henderson and Neal McCreedy of Rebel Grove coming to you from beautiful Tuscaloosa, Alabama. He's in Oxford. Neal, thanks for joining us. Let's dive right into it. This week, going into the first SEC game for Alabama and Ole Miss. Ole Miss 3-0, Alabama 2-1, coming off a 17-3 win over South Florida. Lane Kiffin garnered the headlines, and he was talking about Alabama having a different defensive coordinator. Before we dive into that, just kind of scale me this Ole Miss team. When you look to what they've done so far this season, a 73-7 win over Mercer, 37-20 over Tulane, and just recently 48-23 win over Georgia Tech. What should we know from the offense, the defense? Kind of scale it down for us going into this week 4 matchup.
Yeah, like you said, they're 3-0. Throw the Mercer game out. I mean, Mercer was that's one of those bye games. Everybody's got one, and that was theirs. They went down to Tulane. Tulane's good, but Tulane was without their quarterback, Michael Pratt. Mm-hmm. And that game in the fourth quarter was a one-score game with Tulane driving down the field. They got to the 21. They needed the 20 for a first down. They didn't get it. And then Ole Miss, to its credit, kind of blew the game open from there, got a couple of scores, made the final look a lot bigger than it was. But again, that's credit to them. That was what they failed to do last year sometimes. And then last Saturday against Georgia Tech, again, it was a one-score game, fourth quarter. Give Ole Miss credit. They did their thing in the fourth quarter, got some scores, blew it open with a late touchdown, made it look like more than it was, but they dominated the fourth quarter. That's a positive for them. Again, there was something they struggled with at times, last season with that team. What do we know about Ole Miss? I don't know. Not much. They've done what they've been asked to do, and that's all that you can do. All they can be right now is 3-0. They've played 3 games. Those were the games on the schedule, and they've won them. Have they played an elite team? No. Have they played a really good team? Probably not when you consider the fact that Tulane didn't have Pratt. If Tulane would have had Pratt, that would look different probably in terms of how you'd feel about it. But they haven't been truly challenged by a strong quarterback. I did think Haynes King, the former Texas A&M quarterback, did a lot of good things for Georgia Tech. Brent Key and those guys have done a really good job with that roster from a year ago. Ole Miss went into Atlanta last year and won 42-0, and this was a totally different look to this game this past weekend. But offensively, they have really leaned on Jackson Dart, the quarterback. Second year as the starter, he's been terrific so far. Really has. Probably has played as well as he has in his career, as well as Ole Miss probably could have hoped that he would play. They've yet to get Quinshon Judkins, the preseason All-American running back, going. He's really struggled. Teams have obviously keyed on him. They've stacked the box. They're trying to take away A-gap. He got hurt a little bit at the end of the Tulane game. He only had, 13 carries on Saturday against Georgia Tech, was not remarkably effective. Didn't get him going. Dart had a big day on the ground. Ulysses Bentley, the SMU transfer, had a big game on the ground, but they've had a hard time getting him going. First 2 games of the season, Trey Harris, wide receiver transfer from Louisiana Tech, had 5 touchdown receptions, I should say. He got hurt on the first series of the Tulane game, has not played since. His availability is a storyline here for this week. They had really high hopes for Caden Prieskorn, the Memphis transfer tight end. Won the job in the spring, was having a really good camp. He got hurt with the foot injury. He's yet to play. He was in a boot on Saturday night. He practiced today. I don't know to what degree. I don't know how effective he is. Again, that's another storyline. People thought going into the season, Kyle, this would be a really good offensive line, and maybe it will eventually be a really good offensive line. 4 returning starters from a year ago, and they added Quincy McGee from UAB, Victor Kern from Washington. The expectation was that unit would be a strength for them, and so far that has not been the case. They have sort of struggled to put it all together. They've struggled in pass protection. They've struggled in run blocking. It's forced them to really lean on Dart's feet, which is good and bad. It's good that he has the feet and the legs and the speed to make plays happen. It's bad that you don't want your quarterback getting hit all the time. So they've had that. And then defensively, it's Pete Golding. You guys are familiar with him, the former Alabama defensive coordinator in his first season at Ole Miss. He doesn't have the personnel that he had at Alabama last year. I mean, there's no Will Anderson on this defense. There's no Dallas Turner on this defense. There's no Kool-Aid McKinstry at corner. There's a bunch of guys. Bama's been loaded I don't know. Sometimes Alabama fans truly appreciate the luxury of riches that they have
Mhm.
over there in terms of personnel. But he's done a good job so far. They looked kind of slow against Mercer. They got off to a bad start against Tulane, settled in and made some plays. Got off to a good start against Georgia Tech, then got kind of loose, gave up some touchdowns, ended up giving up 477 yards to Georgia Tech. Probably not the best sign in the world. They weren't super thrilled with that. They'll have their hands full. They're trying to incorporate young linebacker Suntaran Perkins, who Alabama recruited really hard. 5-star out of Raleigh, Mississippi. He played 30 some odd snaps against Georgia Tech, which was probably 20 more than he played against Tulane and probably 20 less than he'll play against Alabama, I would think. They're going to try to get him in. They're rotating a bunch of guys up front on defense. They have some weapons there. J.J. Pegues, former Auburn player. Cedric Johnson, Mobile boy, has been a 3-4 year starter at Ole Miss. They've got a bunch of bodies in the secondary. I think they're still trying to figure out what the best fits are, that kind of thing. And obviously it's a new scheme. It's a new coordinator. There's a lot new on the defensive side that they're still sort of sorting out and working out. And obviously Saturday, I know Alabama's had a lot of issues on offense, but this will be the biggest test for that defense so far this year.
Do Ole Miss fans, do they like Pete Golding, A, and then B, how is their exotic blitz packages? Because South Florida put so much heat on Alabama, as did Texas. Texas beat up Alabama with like a 3-man rush, a 4-man rush. So from kind of a blitz or, in the trenches standpoint on the defensive side, what are they bringing? And then what's kind of the situation with Golding and how fans adapted to him? And then tell me too, what happened? Where did Kiffin like get after Golding, or what happened early on in the season?
Okay, well, I'll start there. The first play of the season defensively, Mercer, and I don't remember the quarterback's name. I'm sure he's a fine young man. He ran 75 yards for a touchdown on the very first play. And the story, as Kiffin tells it, I wasn't on the headset, so I'll have to take his word for it. The story, as he told it, was he said, "Pete, we paid a lot of money to get you here. That's not it, basically." And Golding said, "They won't score again today, coach." And they didn't. It was 73-7. It was one play.
Yeah,
and they shut him down the rest of the way. People love Golding. He was an elite recruiter at Alabama. They expect him to be an elite recruiter here, and he has absolutely impacted recruiting so far. He's got a lot of Mississippi ties. He's got some family, obviously, in Oxford. So him coming to Ole Miss was something people were excited about. And he's an upgrade over what they had previously, because I just think he's been in the league, man. This is SEC's it's a big boy league, and you got to have people that understand what you face week in and week out. And I think he gets it. And as for his blitz packages, the only thing that we've really seen was a little bit of it against Tulane when that game was looking kind of iffy for Ole Miss second half. I think they had to add some swirl to the vanilla, if you will, at that point. They had to throw some toppings in there to get past Tulane. But I think they've been careful not to put everything on film. But look, he was at Alabama for 5 seasons. They know what he's going to try to dial up, when he's going to try to dial it up. I mean, we make a lot of stuff about coaches, and I'm sure you're going to ask me about Lane and Kevin Steele and Travaris Robinson, and we're going to talk about Nick and Lane and their relationship and all that stuff, and it makes good print and it makes good talk, but none of those cats are playing this game. I mean, Kevin Steele's not making a tackle on Saturday. Pete Golding's not making a tackle on Saturday. This thing is it's the SEC, man. This thing is about players. All of these coaches are super competent at a minimum, and most of them are elite at what they do.
So I think with that said, and sticking on the defense, being that Pete Golding knows Jalen Milroe, knows Ty Simpson, doesn't know Tyler Buckner, but Tyler Buckner is probably not going to play again over here.
That was rough film.
So he's gone against Simpson and Milroe, so he knows. Okay, we all get it. Jalen Milroe is going to be the fastest player out there, period. Every single game. He can hit the deep ball. I mean, you've seen it. He's throwing the interceptions. Ty Simpson, you saw a small sample size of him. Does that give Ole Miss a little bit of an edge, being that he knows kind of what their ceilings are or could be? Or is it still just, is it kind of an execution standpoint on the defensive side? I mean, because let's face it, I mean, it would be ironic that Alabama fans, because they wanted Pete gone so bad,
Right.
so bad.
Yep.
And then wouldn't it be ironic that Pete Golding's defense comes back and beats Alabama? That would be crazy.
It would be ironic. Yeah. Look, does it give him an advantage? Does it give Ole Miss an advantage? Maybe a little, right? I mean, you got a defensive coordinator that can prepare his team really well in terms of, hey guys, this is what this guy can do.
Yeah.
This is what maybe he can't do. This is what he struggles with. Maybe he knows, what looks confuse him, what looks lend pause to him.
Yes.
Maybe he feels like he can trick him here and there. But again, man, at the end of the day, right? He's got to have the personnel that can tackle him, that can corral him. Ole Miss has, struggled a little bit with running quarterbacks in the past, and Haynes King was effective on Saturday against Ole Miss at times. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's an advantage. I don't think it's this glaring advantage that changes the game. I mean, on the flip side, there are coaches on the Alabama staff that know Pete Golding really well.
That's true.
Are going to know his tendencies and are going to be able to say, hey, if they get into third and if we get into 3rd and 8, this is the kind of look that he typically brings, right? So a lot of that stuff cancels itself out. And, it comes down to execution. I mean, it's not look, Pete Golding can look at Alabama film and go, one of these offensive tackles you can speed rush. Another offensive tackle, you can sort of get inside him. And so he's going to try to exploit that. It's like in baseball, right? If I'm pitching against you and I've noticed on film that, hey, if I get that fastball thigh high or lower on the inside against Kyle, he's going to hit a bunch of weak ground balls. That's what he's been doing. Well, that's where I'm going to throw it. I'm going to throw it there, and I'm going to throw it there. Now it's a matter of you hitting it. And if you execute, then I got to change my plan. I got to go, okay, well, he's figured that out. I got to go to something else. But if you show that you can't handle that, it's just not going to be a complicated approach for me when you come up to the plate that night. I'm going to throw the inside fastball. I might throw something else to change your looks away, but I'm going to come back when I need to get you. I'm going there. And so we know what's coming, and everybody does. I mean, Jalen Milroe will know what's coming from Pete Golding, and Pete Golding will know what Jalen Milroe is thinking, and then it'll be a matter of execution.
Last year, Alabama 30, Ole Miss 24. The year before that, in Tuscaloosa, 41-21. I felt.
Can we just talk about Bryce Young last year for a minute, because Bryce Young last year was unbelievable.
I know.
That dude was unbelievable.
And you know what? It's crazy is I feel the nickname that didn't stick that I thought would have stuck on him is Georgia came up with this a couple years ago, was the gingerbread man, because literally like you could not get your paws on him, and his escapability and his deep ball accuracy as it continued to improve was just something extraordinary. And the dude was so calm, so cool under pressure. I mean,
Ole Miss had them on the ropes last year, and I had my binoculars on the Alabama sideline. I think this was 3rd quarter, but I watched Bryce Young go up and down the sideline talking to offensive guys.
Yeah.
And then they all responded to him. The one thing I noticed was even in that moment, everybody looked him in the eye. And that cat went out there and they drove down the field and got a big touchdown in a spot where that game was getting a little squirrely for Alabama at times last year in Oxford. And I mean, it was teetering on the brink a little bit, and he was just brilliant. I know where he doesn't play, and I accidentally mentioned him on Saturday night, and Lane was like, I'm glad to know Bryce isn't going to be there, and all that stuff. But I don't know. I hope people appreciate how great of a college player he was. He was
and I think you hit on that too, is not only was he poised and could he deliver in big games and in clutch situations, but he also had strong leadership ability too. And I don't know if this team quite has that just yet going into this part of the season. They had a players only meeting. You know how teams have that, so maybe can kind of rile them up. I have no idea if that'll translate to the field or not. I feel that when Lane Kiffin has played Alabama, and I get it, like he tweets, who doesn't love him on Twitter, right? And the way that he tweets and trolls and, is always something about Alabama, or maybe I see it because it's always in my feed. He tweeted just recently about the gratitude journal had to go, had the transfer portal, and, that he's excited. But I felt that 2 years ago when they came to Alabama, he played more emotional than with his head, if that makes sense. Because I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, like he would love nothing more to beat someone that he looks up to so much. And who wouldn't, right? Who doesn't want to beat Coach Saban? And some former assistants have now done it. Sarkisian, Jimbo. Um, do you feel, yeah, Kirby, thank you. Do you feel that like this game, because Coach Speak is like, it's every other game, it's just like any other game. Do you feel that it's more to Lane? I know it's probably a question better for him, but is it?
Yes, 100%.
Right?
No doubt about it. I mean, he can try to deny it, but his actions show it.
Yeah,
he treats this game differently.
Yeah.
He did the popcorn thing 2 years ago, and that was, that was showed people. I think people missed the point of that.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, we're going to show him. We're going to shove the popcorn in his face. It's like, yeah, but you're missing the point. Is that he was so geeked up for that game.
Yeah.
That instead of just doing what coaches always do in that pregame thing about, yeah, we're fired up, we're ready to play. It's going to be a big game, great atmosphere. Let's go see what happens. Whatever. Yeah, they're great. We're going to have our hands full, but we're going to give it a shot. Here we go. It was like, get your popcorn ready. I mean, he was just so geeked up for it. And then last year, as that game got close, you could feel the tension a little bit with him. And he's got two challenges as it pertains to Alabama. Is that one, you can't treat it like something more than it is, because then the kids sense it.
Yeah.
And then two, look, win or lose Saturday afternoon in Tuscaloosa, win or lose, they got to get back on the bus, get back to Oxford, and they play LSU a week later.
Oh, shoot.
And then a week after that, they play Arkansas. And Arkansas hasn't been exactly a pushover for Lane Kiffin in his 3 years at Ole Miss. There's still football left to play. You can't let – I kind of felt like last year losing to Alabama, they sort of lost Alabama about 3 times. They laid an egg in Fayetteville the next week. And then I shouldn't say bad, an average Mississippi State team beat them in Oxford. I don't think all those things were completely related, but they weren't completely unrelated either. So, he's got that challenge. But yeah, look, he wants to beat Nick Saban. It's the one team in the SEC West that he hasn't beaten. I mean, a lot of people think that sometimes the Alabama stuff is overdone from him or that it's whatever. But look, I think he genuinely believes that Nick Saban threw him a life raft.
Yeah.
In his career. And, I know that people like to make all the Joey Freshwater jokes and all of that stuff. But look, Lane Kiffin played a pretty big role at Alabama in the adaptation of the Alabama offense to the modern era.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that relationship, I don't know that Nick Saban and Lane Kiffin are best pals. I don't know that they're spending a lot of time on the phone chatting about family but I think there is a lot of mutual respect. And I know that Kiffin, because I don't think he could, if this were a charade, I don't think he could keep it up this long. I think he looks at his time at Alabama as a time that saved his career. And he looks at his time with Nick Saban as a time that forced him to grow up and taught him a lot about coaching. And, this is a guy whose dad, Monty Kiffin's, a legend in the NFL. This is a guy that worked for Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll's a legend in coaching. Maybe one of the few people who can even come close to rivaling Nick Saban. He's not there, but in the ballpark at least. And yet I think if you, in his heart of hearts, the 3 years that he had in Tuscaloosa shaped his career more than anything else.
Here with Neal McCreedy of Rebel Grove. You can check out Alabama and Ole Miss coverage on his Rivals website. We're part of Rivals, for 15 years together. I am now independent on the YouTube channel, and he's part of Rivals, does great work. So happy to have him here as we turn the page to the first SEC game for each team. as we continue on Lane Kiffin, does he have the horses? Does he have the arsenal to take this team into a street fight with Alabama? And look, I mean, Alabama is not the Alabama that people are accustomed to right now. People feel that they are vulnerable. They are vulnerable. Like, I was just in Tampa and South Florida, like, they were excited. The coach, Alex Gollash, after was like, we played defense well enough to win this game. I mean, it's people have seen Alabama play, Texas, middle. We didn't really get too much from that game. And against, South Florida game that was on ABC, it's not impressive. It's far from a finished product.
Sure.
Does he have the arsenal to beat that? And do fans, of course, fans think they're going to win every game. But, when you look to, I was just looking at Winnipeg. I mean, Ole Miss hasn't won this game since 2016. And before that, they had 2015, 2014. Before that was back to 2004. So,
yeah,
kind of what's the pulse overall? If the fans kind of, hey, this is a vulnerable team, and does Lane, with the offensive mind that he has, does he have the arsenal to take this into a street fight?
So I can't ever really speak for fans other than the ones that are on my message board, right?
Yeah.
But I think there's because I'm the guy that avoids getting out in the public and having those conversations because I just no thanks. And I think fans see Alabama as mortal for the first time in a while. I mean, I think that's the word, right? I mean, there have been years where you look at Alabama and you're like, well, I mean, not winning this game unless they commit 6 turnovers, not winning this game unless they just forget how to play today. And, maybe we get on the field at the same time that Alabama beats themselves and, not a whole hell of a lot happening like that in the Nick Saban era in Tuscaloosa. I'm sure it's happened a time or two, but not much. And so, there was never a real sense of it was usually more of a sense of dread, probably like, I kind of feel like I've read this book before. I know how it's going to end, but I'm going to give it a shot. And then sure enough, the ending was the same. This time, I think there's a sense that Alabama, like you said, is vulnerable. There is no Bryce Young. That offensive front's not as good as it's been in the past. They don't appear to have the elite superstar wide receivers that they've had in the past who could just go make plays. Julio Jones and Amari Cooper and just Jerry Jeudy. The list just goes on and on. Dudes that just Devontae Smith. I mean, guys that you just, what do you do with them, right? I mean, you can't guard them. You can't defend them. And so then they go make plays. And, they've had this run of NFL quarterbacks, Jalen Hurts and Tua Tagovailoa, Mac Jones and Bryce Young. I mean, my God, like I said, it's an embarrassment of riches. And now they look across and they see this kid at quarterback who looks mortal.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, we've beaten guys like him before. That's how I think they think. Does Lane have the horses? So this is where it comes down to health. Is Trey Harris healthy?
Yeah.
I don't know. Is Caden Prescorn healthy? I don't know. Is Quinshon Judkins healthy? Is he ready to go? I don't know.
Wow.
And so if they are, if all of those guys are close to 100%, and you throw in, Jordan Watkins and Dayton Wade and some of these guys that have really stepped up in the last few weeks, and give Jackson Dart a full arsenal, and Jackson Dart plays one of his best games, if not his best game. Yeah, I think so. Because I don't know that Alabama is going to go roll out 40 points on an SEC defense right now. They don't. I don't see that. But where I tell people, hey, you got to be a little cautious here, like back off a little. I watched the Texas game. That game was a fourth quarter game. Now, Texas owned the fourth quarter. I mean, they dominated it. And so that's what we remember from it. But there was a moment, was it late third, where Alabama took the lead and you thought, see, this is Alabama, man. They figure out ways to win these games. That's what they do. And it's still, to my eyes, it's still a really talented defense. It's still a talented team. That is a difficult place to play. They don't lose a lot of games at Bryant-Denny. It's still Nick Saban on that other sideline. It's still a very talented coaching staff. Does Ole Miss have the horses to pull it off? I think so. But now these people who are like, oh man, this is a game Ole Miss is gonna win. That feels a little strong. Like you got to go prove you can do it. And look, here's the thing, right? If and this is early in the season, but if Alabama had played Ole Miss's schedule right now, they'd be 3-0. And if Ole Miss had played Alabama's schedule right now, they'd be 2-1. Because I think Texas would have come to Oxford and won that night. So who knows, right? I mean, I don't know what we're looking at. I mean, there were times last year, you know this, with Alabama, with Bryce Young, with Will Anderson, with all those cats, that they played some games where you're like, man, this thing could go the other way on them fast. And then, you know, and yet on the other hand, they were 2 plays away from undefeated. I mean, so there was a lot of that. So you don't know whether this is the karma finally catching them. Is this the beginning of the end of the dynasty? Have they lost their edge? I do think it's a completely different landscape today than the one that Nick Saban operated in when he built the greatest dynasty that college football will ever see. It will never be replicated, not by Nick or anybody else. What Alabama fans have enjoyed the last 15 seasons or whatnot. I don't have my numbers exactly right. No one's ever doing that again. Not in this era, Alabama included. Nobody's ever doing it again. But you know, I do think the era has changed. I think the landscape has changed, and so it does make them more vulnerable and more human and more mortal. And yeah, they could Alabama lose to Ole Miss on Saturday? Sure.
You mentioned that the landscape of college football has changed, and that's something that we talked about even pre-show. I mean, more and more we see Coach Prime in the spotlight, and you know, a couple of years ago, oddly enough, I owned a website that covered the Buffs, and you know, couldn't even, you know, you could sell, you know, $1 for a year, you know, or whatever, and it's just like not a lot of traction, because when you're in Boulder, there's a lot of other things that you can do other than watch, you know, a Pac-12 team. Now, what he's been able to do in Boulder is the new landscape of college football, the new. I mean, he came out the other night with Lil Wayne, right? Like leading the team onto the field, and we all stayed up to watch Colorado and Colorado State.
I know.
That game, and you know, it was worth it too. I mean, I was even in Tampa watching the game.
Well, there's a reason all the TV people are going back and back and back. I mean, it's numbers. It's not agendas. It's just numbers. They're getting eyeballs.
And so the world of college football, it's changing. And just as you said, like this dynasty that Saban had made, it's not that world anymore. The transfer portal, NIL, like this is a whole new dimension of college football, right?
I do a show with Tyler Siskey, former Alabama staffer, who was the director of personnel at Alabama for a while. He was Matt Luke's recruiting coordinator at Ole Miss, coached at South Alabama with Joey Jones. So a guy that's a lot of background in college football. And we have Jeff Collins on every Monday, the former Florida defensive coordinator, former Georgia Tech coach, former Temple coach. I mean, Jeff, impeccable credentials, Mississippi State defensive coordinator. Jeff was saying on Monday that these guys are independent contractors in many ways now. And so he says he notices there's more loafs. There's more clear lack of effort. There's less gang tackling. There's less 11 hats to the ball and all of those things that we used to hear about, because it's just in the last 4 years it's changed. And he was basically saying that everybody's vulnerable to it, including Coach Saban and Jeff Collins, like the overwhelming majority of guys who have ever worked for Nick Saban, basically worships him. You know, there's a reverence that they speak of when they talk about Coach Saban. And yet he says, hey, look, it's on their film too. It's on everybody's film, you know? And so, yeah, Kyle, it's a different era. It just is. I mean, we can debate whether it's good. We can debate whether it's bad or whether it's some mixed bag, and I don't know, whatever. But this is what it is. And so, you know, Alabama, when you think about Alabama, when I think about it, and I never covered them really. I guess I covered a few games as kind of a fill-in beat writer on one of Saban's first years there in Tuscaloosa. You know, they had this process. You go recruit the best players in the country. You'd evaluate the best players in the country. You'd go recruit the best players in the country. You'd bring them to Tuscaloosa, and you would get them to put we in front of me. You would get them to buy into the process, do all the stuff, wait your turn. You were going to get on the field. Maybe you'd start out in special teams, whatever. But you're going to get on the field when you were ready to get on the field. And two things were basically guaranteed. One, you're going to win championships. And two, if you're good enough, they're going to get you ready for the NFL. And not just the NFL, but the first rounds of the NFL. You're going to make real money. And hey, and the proof is in the pudding. I mean, they did it. They did it. I mean, that place has more trophies than, I mean, they got, I don't know where they keep all the trophies. They probably got trophies lost somewhere. And they got more dudes in the NFL. I mean, only Georgia rivals them LSU maybe. I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah.
But I don't know that you can sell that in this environment as frequently as you could 4 years ago. It's changed that fast. I'm not the guy going, "Hey, the dynasty's dead." I'm not doing that. He's too good. He's too good. He's incredible what he did. We those of us who've been able to witness it probably don't realize the greatness that we've witnessed. But it is much more difficult to do what he did now. And kids leave. They don't, you got to be the highest bidder now. And if you're not the highest bidder, you got to be close. And then you have guys that are coming in, they're entitled. They've already got money. They're already making money. You don't have the carrot of NFL money. It's still out there, but that carrot's not quite as shiny. They got some money. And if you come to a place and they get to Alabama and they're like, "Hey, I'm third team." In the past, you'd wait your turn. You'd work even harder. Now it's pretty easy to jump in the portal and go to UCLA or Tennessee or Florida State or wherever and go play, man.
Yeah.
And so, I just think that makes it more difficult. I know he has said that, hey, they've really only lost like one guy that they were disappointed to lose, but I find it difficult to believe that this hasn't impacted.
But it's a little bit. With that said, and a lot of people will talk about that one that they were kind of disappointing and left. But think about the guys that they weren't able to get.
Right.
That's probably more impactful, right? Like the guys that they weren't able to get, probably one of the quarterbacks that are currently out there.
You don't think Sam Hartman would make a difference at Alabama right now, do you? I mean, we would have a completely different view of Alabama. All this talk about the dynasty being dead would not exist if Sam Hartman were under center.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, Spencer Sanders is Ole Miss's backup. I think he would be the guy at Alabama right now.
Yeah,
with his experience, and they don't have those people for a reason. I mean, I would assume that reason is resources.
Yep, that's exactly it.
Crazy as that sounds.
Yeah.
But the landscape is different in the way that you accumulate talent now and how you.
That's why I think that victory for Texas, not only for Sark, but because Texas has as much money as you could ever dream, right? Yeah. Imagine what that's going to do now. Is we beat Bama. This is the type of money that we have. That could do something for that program that we haven't even thought about. Because not only is Sarkisian such an amazing mind, they have the money to do whatever they want to do.
Absolutely.
Right?
No, they're I remember when all this NIL stuff started, talking to someone in college football circles who's super connected. And he said, I'll tell you, when this goes down, there's three programs nationally that have a chance to do what Alabama's doing now. And I was like, who? And he said, USC, Texas, and Texas A&M.
Yeah.
He said, nobody else can compete in that circle. He goes, maybe Miami down the road with the right combination, but those three for certain. And I was like, well, what about Alabama? What about Georgia? And it was like, look, they won't be able to do at that level what those programs can do. And that's why there's so much pressure on Jimbo, right? It's not, hey, 8-4 is not good enough. It's 8-4 is not what we're paying for.
Exactly. And can you imagine? I mean, people are saying what they want Coach Prime to go all over Alabama, whatever. We have no idea. But could you imagine if Texas A&M was like, all right, Jimbo, it's been real. Coach Prime, how's 500 mil sound? Come over here.
I mean, it would be fascinating. I mean, it would be a crazy roll of the dice, but because here's the thing, with Sanders is right now we're doing this thing in the media. They're undefeated and they've got these players and they're winning, but they're probably losing at Oregon. They're probably going to lose to USC. They're probably going to lose to Oregon State, to maybe to UCLA, to Utah.
Yep.
What?
I don't see them winning any of those games. You're right.
Are the same media that are like, oh yeah, this is the greatest thing. Are they going to then start tearing him down when what's happened to Deion Sanders?
Yeah.
Not so prime now, all that stuff. And that's what's coming. It's, I don't know, but look, he's shown that he can turn a roster over, which is part of modern college football.
Yes.
It's what Lane Kiffin did at Ole Miss. It's, I mean, when Lane does the gratitude journal and lists the portal, I always giggle too, but genuinely, I mean, if you're Lane Kiffin from a professional standpoint, what are you grateful for? The transfer portal, because he would have had to do a rebuild here. and he's not the rebuild type. He doesn't want to rebuild.
Yeah.
And so, you want somebody who can go win the portal, who can turn rosters over, who can manage a roster. One of the things I give Kiffin credit for is he talked about how they're not going to do the family thing here where they talk about family. We're families. It's not family. You don't treat your family like you treat people in football now. I mean, if a kid's not good enough, you get rid of him. If your kid's not good enough, you don't get rid of your kid, right? You just kind of figure out how you can help him or her. And so, I mean, it's just a different world, man. I mean, I think we're just watching different people try to adapt to it. It's what's interesting about Saban is I think if you talk about the one thing that Nick Saban's best at over the course of his career, it's adaptation. And this is like the biggest adaptation ask that has ever been made. And, I don't know whether he's struggling with it or whether their program is or what again, they're still in the race. Right. But I mean, it is different. I mean, it's different adapting to this than it is going, hey, you know what? This hurry up, no huddle thing, as much as I don't like it, it's probably here to stay for a while. Let's figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Neal, I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much. Big fan of your work. I mean, the one thing that has always stood out is just you've always done such a great job with consistency. But as you've navigated more towards like the media side, and I know you got a killer podcast and stuff, your audio is like it's the standard. You are the GOAT of like the audio quality, man.
Well, I'll give credit where it's due. There's a company here in Oxford called Vault Entertainment, VAULT. They do a lot of work all over the Southeast. Most recently were setting up all of the scoreboard stuff at Jordan-Hare for Auburn. They're fantastic. And, I quick story. 4 years ago when the whole COVID thing hit, I saw it not as an opportunity, but I saw it as, okay, this is a necessity. Like I can't do rebelgrove.com and MPW Digital the way that we've done it in the past and thrive. No way. Because, you could see what was coming and there were people that were like, hey man, there's no guarantee that there's a football season. Which was, you think about that now, Kyle, we had the football season. So we're like, oh yeah, we got a game. I mean, Alabama won the national title. But that season almost didn't happen. And if that season hadn't happened, we weren't going to have basketball. We weren't going to have baseball. We were going to go a full year without anything. And I thought, okay, well, how do you keep an audience when you've built it for sports and there are no sports? And then what if it's 2 years? What do you do, right? Because at the time, everybody's doing this COVID thing, man. It's 2 years. You kill all these people and blah, blah, blah. And I'm not getting political at all. I'm just being honest. And so I said, we have no choice but to adapt. And we changed what we did. And as we changed what we did, I began to realize, we got to upgrade quality a little bit. And then, the season happened, but everything was Zoom. So we did pregame shows, live watches, postgame shows, taking calls. We added a business show. I flirted with the politics show. We added a recruiting show. We added a basketball show. We added just stuff. And not everything worked. Some stuff worked. Some stuff didn't work. I started a podcast. There's a butcher in town named Greg Jones. And my daughter at the time, when football started back, was starting her sophomore year at the University of Arkansas. And I'd get them on a Zoom every week, and they would pick games against each other. And it was stupid and funny. And you know what happened, though, is I'd still, and to this day it happens, I'd get an email from women going, I love that show. It's my favorite show. It's just 20 stupid minutes. And they clearly, she doesn't know football. I'd be like, okay, Campbell, we're picking, Oregon and Washington. And she's like, what color is Oregon? I'm like, green. And she's like, I like green. I'll go with Oregon. And then Oregon would win. And she'd go, I'm going to ride Oregon for a while. And it was stuff like that. It was just silly, stupid, but we tried different things. And, but over the course of time, I'm like, I need to improve my audio. I need to improve production value. And I don't have the money to go build a state-of-the-art studio. I mean, I can't do the Texags thing, right? And kudos to those guys because, I mean, they do a lot of cool stuff. it was just that. And it was like, let's do this, and let's at least try to make it, manageable. And over the course of time, I think we have been able to kind of do that. And as you know, because man, you people don't know how much you're like a god in the YouTube space. Like it's hard to monetize YouTube. It is hard. And you've done it, but like you always have to be thinking about ways. This is what I tell young people all the time, because I get that question. I know you do too. Like, how do I make this monetized? And I'm like, well, number one, you always have to be trying to get better. And number two is you just have to be willing to fail. You have to be willing to try some stuff that other people are going to go, man, that's stupid. And you might look back and go, you're right, that was kind of stupid, but I tried, right?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, and I look, this is going to sound bad. I don't mean this way, Ole Miss, because I mean, I've covered some really good Ole Miss teams. But when you cover Ole Miss for a period of time, it's, there's going to be some down years. Maybe not, but I mean, I've covered Ole Miss in the Sugar Bowl, and I've covered Ole Miss at 2-10, and I don't know how they won the 2. I mean, so, and I've covered everything in between. I haven't covered the Alabama dynasty. I mean, it's been a slog, and you have to be creative, and you have to come up with stuff, and you have to try things, and I'm nowhere close to mastered it or anything. But the people at Vault, I listened to them, and they came in here and completely redid our setup and new equipment. And I had to biting the bullet on the money up front was like a little hard to do, but I knew it was necessary. And I appreciate you saying that, because I've heard a lot of people talk about how much they appreciate the audio. And we live in when I started podcasting, there were no other podcasts. Like we were podcasting before podcasting was cool, but now, I mean, everybody's got a podcast. So if your audio sucks and your content sucks, you're just not going to retain people.
100%.
Neal, was more than you wanted there. It was more than you wanted.
No. I appreciate it, because I'm in that world. Like I live it, so I understand it. That's why I said it. And the audio is so important, and it can like, and people, and that's like for me too. It was like one of the main things is audio. So I'm always making sure that even if it takes a little bit longer for this video to be uploaded, we need to make sure that the audio is as good as it can get, right? Because there's nothing that'll make somebody leave quicker than bad audio.
Yeah. So, and sometimes it's hard to make it perfect, right? Because,
it's hard, man. It's hard.
Like Zoom calls and stuff like that, it's kind of difficult. But
so
I don't know. I know you do a lot of StreamYard, and I've started flirting with the idea of messing with StreamYard a little bit more, because I do think the audio is better than Zoom.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is, but I think, like, your setup as well. Like, I could tell you have a compressor and everything sounds good, but now we're getting technical, man, right? People are like, shut up.
Shut up.
They're like, shut up.
Oh, damn it.
Shut up. Fuck Jalen Milroe, or shut up. Neal, I appreciate you more.
Right,
man. Keep up the good work. And we will catch up soon. And if you need anything from me, don't hesitate, please.
You bet, buddy. I appreciate you. Thanks.
All right, man. Take it easy.